We generally mark Founders Day in May, and this year we're coming to some special Founders Day anniversaries. This Ethical Humanist Society was founded 75 years ago in the fall of 1950. So it's a jubilee year for us, and we'll have a special celebration in the fall, and it promises to be really nice. So the founding of this society was part of the big post-war migration from the cities to the suburbs, and there was a big tidal wave out to Long Island. My own family is part of that. My parents went from Brooklyn to East Meadow, a new house in East Meadow in 1954. Actually, some 21 new societies were founded in mostly suburban areas all around the country in the immediate post-World War II period of the 1950s. Several of them are still around today, not all. There's kind of a life cycle to groups typically. Most of them experience an arc that begins with new inspiration, it flourishes, peaks, wanes, and ultimately disappears. So there's something pretty remarkable for a group to endure over these many years, 3 generations at least. So the Long Island Society endured, as did the ethical culture movement itself. Ethical culture is beginning its 150th year, and that's pretty impressive, 150 years. What does it take for a movement to last beyond the life of its energetic founder? It must mean there's something real here, and that's alive and growing. Both the ethical culture movement as a whole and the Long Island Society in particular have a rich history of social action, community building, really a legacy to be proud of. It reflects a mission, a purpose, a self-definition that continues to inspire its members and those who come to join it, who add their energy. I look again at the video that's on our website that talks about the history of this society, and it's really very inspirational. It was written by Lynn and Liz Siegert. Yeah, you get credit for it. And Judy Rosemarin narrates it. It's really special. If you haven't seen it or it's been a while, you really should look at it. It's inspirational. The New York Society, of course, is where the ethical movement began, and it is going all out for its 150th. Starting now, which is the 149th anniversary, it's intended to inaugurate a whole year of festivities of some form or another to culminate on the 150th, the sesquicentennial in 2026. So the ethical movement itself was founded on a Monday evening, May 15 of 1876. For that event, Felix Adler, just 24 years of age, he gave a speech outlining the movement that he was intending to create. Some 100 people were invited. He had a small following already. And certainly most of you know the story, right? His father was the chief rabbi at Temple Emmanuel, the big Reform Jewish congregation in New York City. Young Adler studied for the rabbinate, but while his studies off in Europe, while he was there, he was introduced to a mixture of modern thought, including free thought ideas, the new higher criticism in biblical studies. These studies analyzed the Bible as having had many authors over a long period of time rather than a single divine origin. He studied Eastern philosophies. He followed the labor movement. So he came back to America with a new degree and a new attitude. So most of you know the rest. The young Adler was invited to give a sermon at Temple Emmanuel as the presumed successor, and he did give it. It was titled, "The Judaism of the Future." It spoke of a new definition of Judaism that was universal, open to all, not just genetic Jewry. And that focused entirely on embracing ethics as its central core. He never mentioned God. So that didn't go over very well, and he didn't get the job. But his sermon kind of piqued the imagination of several people who heard him, including some of the heavy hitters of the congregation. The president, Joseph Seligman, a prosperous banker, underwrote a teaching position for him at Cornell, and he taught Semitic languages. He also, is there a bang going on, or? Oh, I don't know what's in here, what's in the hearing aid, what's out there. So he also, am I getting shot, or what? Is there somebody out there? I didn't think I'd have resistance. Yeah. Anyway, he had a men's group off campus, and he inspired other young people with the idea that personal growth demanded a strong ethical core and that ancient religious traditions were but an unnecessary distraction. His God was spelled with two O's, as he liked to say. But complaints were made to the college administration that this atheist was harming the minds of young people, and he was not invited back after 2 years. But that was when he was encouraged by a group of supporters to create this new movement. So if you were to read that first speech from May 15, 1876, you might be surprised to see, just turn it off. Okay. Okay. All right, how's that? Great. So if you were to read the first speech, you might be surprised to see that the meetings he envisioned are very much like the meetings we hold today. Central to the meeting was to be a speaker holding forth on issues of ethics and right living. The leaders then were called lecturer. They didn't want to recreate the theatricality of the existing traditional religions, as in maybe I should just talk. I don't know.
No, it's down in here. I want to make sure people on the screen.
Yeah. All right. I don't want to scare the young people. Okay. New movement. There we are. So as he envisioned it, it was rather austere. It was meant to be more of a philosophy and intellectual pursuit, but with a personal importance that was as serious and engaging as one's religion ought to be. The New York Society in the 1870s started with social service projects and institution building. A roster of the projects they began with is exhaustive reading. Perhaps it's because we see it in a compressed historical vision, but it seems extraordinary how many things the society was engaged with and how impactful it was all through its history. On Friday, the Ethical Culture Fieldston School had its annual Founders Day. And every year they have a Founders Day, and the seniors and many of the other kids come from the Bronx down to the New York Society with the big auditorium. And it's a big deal. They make a big deal of it. And it's really interesting how they really continue this reference to Felix Adler as the founder. And his personality still hovers over it. So I gave a welcoming address as, they come into the society building, from the school building. And they had a keynote speaker. It's like a graduation. But the concept of ethical culture and Felix Adler as a founder is really kept alive by the school. And it's really wonderful to see. And the story of this society is very much like that of the main society. I made a list of all the projects that are referred to in the historical video on the website, and it is also an exhausting list. It's amazing what people can do when they join forces. Meanwhile, you can say the same thing about numerous other ethical societies around the country. Each is a community of like-minded, ethically concerned people like you who are engaged in active in the ethical work that we need to do. But that said, doting on the ethical action which the community has been active with over the years is to have an incomplete view of the society and its movement. It's not all about social action. Well, social action is kind of key, central to our self-definition, but it's not all. The ethical awakening to our duty to society at large, our enlightened recognition of our relation to others, to those in our own families, our workplaces, the political sphere, is important, but it's not all. It's important to build a better world, one that's compassionate, that's caring, that's respectful of the nature, the whole nature of which we're a part. But that's not all. Adler said that eliciting the best in others, that is to say, by reaching out, building ethical relationships, by helping others to be their best selves through education, by modeling honesty, charity, and compassion, and by making friendships real, meaningful, and enduring, we transform ourselves. By eliciting the best in others, we elicit, that is to say, by reaching out and building ethical relationships, by helping others to be their best selves through, I think I read that. We transform, it's good though, right? It's worth repeating. But by eliciting the best in others, we elicit the best in ourselves. We challenge and uncover the hidden best in ourselves. We grow from the experience and become better people. We are enriched by the action of being engaged, being honest, charitable, and giving. What this new movement offered was a pathway to spiritual development through affirmative action, not through prayer. He encouraged us to focus our attention away from the ethereal and unconnected, the supernatural and the magic, as a route to transcendence, and offered a pathway through the earthly and the tangible toward understanding. Our aspiration would be about ethical growth, ethical betterment, ethical perfection, something maybe never quite achievable. We're all fallible after all, but it's what we strive for. He saw the failure of traditional religions to offer a real basis for morality. So he wrote this: religion has concerned itself with the beginnings of the world and of life. Today, religion must concern itself with the end, the purpose and the future of life. How did things come to be? No, religion must turn to a greater, more important question: what shall we do with this world? What is the outcome to be? We must do what we can to affect the outcome of life. Yet, he didn't call himself an atheist. He did not believe in a regal God sitting on a throne that observes us and judges us, but he did have a strong sense that we're part of an all-encompassing nature. We're all built from the same materials and animated by the same sources of energy. And we are all, people, animals, trees, planets, stars, in relation by this commonality. We're interconnected by the universal energy of the cosmos. He used an analogy to show how we're all connected, which he drew from a story out of the ancient Vedas of India called Indra's net. The legend has it that this Indian god, Indra, had a great palace. Arching over the palace, up in the sky, was a vast net. This net comprised an infinite number of strands that crisscrossed each other. At the juncture of each strand, each intersection, there was a jewel. So there were an infinite number of these jewels, but each jewel contained the reflected image of all the other jewels. The light bouncing off of one jewel bounced into all the others and rebounded from each onto all the jewels again. Each jewel contained the reflected light of all the other jewels. So from this image, Adler devised the notion of what he called the ethical manifold. In this, each action that one takes, each good contribution, each bad transgression, all you do in every sense is transmitted throughout the entire community. It's reflected back and forth. Everyone feels the effects of everyone's conduct. He repeats this imagery in several different ways. He drew on the image of a fabric, an actual fabric of society, in which if any one strand were to fail, the entire fabric will experience the loss. Rehabilitation, for example, would be necessary to the one who transgressed in order to restore the fabric of society. He says elsewhere that light begets light. So the light you emit comes to me and rebounds to others. In this universe, there's no private, independent, hermetic action that's possible. Everything impacts everyone, and every act reverberates through the whole system. In modern physics, that's sometimes referred to as the conservation of information. Any one bit of energy never dies out. It simply merges with everything else and lives on inside the greater whole. In social science terms, it means that we're all brothers and sisters and we need each other and we rely on each other. Adler put it like this: societies for ethical culture exist to reinstate the essential motif of religion through the ages, the shared quest for the good life. They foster a continuing effort to make ethical ideals effective in everyday living and to contribute to the perfection of humankind. They who make this creative ethical task their object will gain courage to meet life greatly, whatever its exigencies, to persist in their endeavors despite endless failures and in contempt of every specious success, to discover a final happiness in life's joys, and to see the star of hope and faith beyond life's sorrows. So, this movement's lasted nearly 150 years now. That's pretty good, but it's always stayed small. What impact has it had on the world? Adler only wrote one book that summarized his philosophy, titled An Ethical Philosophy of Life. Some of his addresses are reprinted, principally the earlier ones. And he initiated a philosophical journal that I believe is still in existence in some form. He contributed to that, articles. He taught a seminar on religion and ethics at Columbia University for many years. Last summer at the AEU Assembly out in Minnesota, a retired philosophy professor from the Washington Society made a presentation about his search for Adler's lasting impact, at least with the philosophical community. He found that it kind of petered out early. He found subtle traces in a work done by one important author of applied ethics from around 1900. I forgot his name, couldn't recall that. His famous friend John Dewey never quite picked up on Adler's philosophical system of human worth, although he did send his grandchildren to the ethical culture school. So where is Felix Adler's legacy? Well, it's here. It's here in the communities he created and fostered, in the communities that generations later formed around his model. It remains alive among real people, those making real-world decisions. It remains alive in people coming together in mutually supportive groups, in people who contribute to their larger community and remain alive among people who support human rights. That is to say, he lives on in real life impacts. That's a fitting legacy for someone who insisted that deed comes before creed, that deed breathes life into creed. So we may say that Felix Adler escaped the ivory tower and lives out here with us in the real world. Okay, thank you.